The telegram arrived on the morning Katherine Zimmerman buried her husband, and by nightfall, the bank had claimed everything she owned. She stood in the dusty street of Deeming, New Mexico, watching three men nail boards across the bakery windows while the September sun beat down mercilessly on her black morning dress. Her hands trembled as she clutched the thin shawl around her shoulders, though the day was sweltering. Thomas had been gone only a week, thrown from a spooked horse on the road to Silver City, his neck broken instantly. Now his debts were hers, and the banker, Mr. Hutchins, had wasted no time informing her that the loans Thomas had taken to keep the bakery running had come due. "Mrs. Zimmerman, you have until tomorrow to vacate the premises," Hutchins said, his voice devoid of sympathy as he supervised the boarding up of her home and livelihood. "The property will be auctioned day after tomorrow to settle the outstanding debt." Katherine wanted to scream, to tear the boards down with her bare hands, but she simply nodded. At 24 years old, she had already learned that life in the territories was unforgiving. She had married Thomas when she was 18, full of hope and dreams about building a life together in the growing town. He had been kind, if not passionate, and she had thrown herself into learning the baking trade alongside him. But Thomas had been better with flour than finances, and his gambling habit had been something he kept hidden until it was far too late. She turned away from the bakery, walking toward the small boarding house where she had secured a room with the last few dollars she had sewn into her dress hem. The streets of Deeming bustled with activity as the railroad town continued to grow, but Katherine felt invisible as she made her way through the crowds. Miners, cowboys, merchants, and railroad workers filled the wooden sidewalks, but none of them met her eyes. A widow with nothing was of no interest to anyone. That night, she lay on the narrow bed in her rented room and allowed herself to cry for the first time since Thomas died. Not for the loss of her husband, if she was honest with herself. Their marriage had been one of convenience and companionship rather than love. She cried for the loss of her independence, her security, her future. Without the bakery, she had no means of supporting herself. She could seek work as a laundress or a cook, but jobs for women were scarce, and the pay would barely keep her fed. The auction took place on a Thursday morning in front of the shuttered bakery. Katherine told herself she would not attend, but she found herself drawn there anyway, standing at the back of the small crowd that had gathered. The auctioneer, a portly man with a voice that carried down the street, began his practice patter. "Fine establishment here, folks. Prime location on Silver Avenue. Building includes living quarters upstairs, fully equipped bakery with 2 ovens, all equipment included. We will start the bidding at $200. Katherine's throat tightened. $200. Thomas had told her the property was worth at least $1,000, but she supposed the debts had eaten away most of that value. $200, called out a voice from the crowd. $225, countered another. Katherine watched numbly as the price climbed slowly. Most of the bidders were local businessmen she recognized, men who saw an opportunity to expand their holdings. The bidding stalled at $350, and the auctioneer was about to bring down his gavel when a new voice rang out from the edge of the crowd. $500. Every head turned. Katherine craned her neck to see who had spoken. A man stood slightly apart from the crowd, tall and lean in dusty work clothes and a worn brown hat. He looked to be in his late 20s, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of creek water in summer. He held himself with a quiet confidence that suggested he was accustomed to being listened to when he spoke. "We have $500 from the gentleman," the auctioneer said, perking up considerably. "Do I hear $525? The other bidders muttered among themselves but did not raise their offers. $500 was a fair price, perhaps even generous given the circumstances. The auctioneer waited, then brought his gavel down with a sharp crack. Sold to Mr. Elijah Sutton for $500. Katherine felt her knees weaken. It was truly gone now. She turned to slip away before anyone could see the tears threatening to spill from her eyes, but she collided with someone in her haste. Strong hands caught her arms, steadying her. "Easy there, madam." She looked up into the face of the man who had just bought her life away. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun, the shadow of stubble on his jaw, the small scar above his left eyebrow. He released her arms immediately, stepping back respectfully. "I apologize," Katherine managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was not watching where I was going." Elijah Sutton removed his hat, revealing dark hair that needed cutting. "No harm done, madam. Are you all right?" "I am fine, thank you." She tried to move past him, but he spoke again. "You are Mrs. Zimmerman, are you not?" She froze. "I am, or I was. I suppose I have no claim to that name anymore without the bakery." Something flickered in his eyes, an emotion she could not quite read. "I am sorry for your loss. Your husband's accident was a terrible thing. Thank you." The words were automatic, empty. She had heard them so many times in the past week that they had lost all meaning. "The bread you baked was the best I ever tasted," he continued. "Whenever I was in town, I made sure to stop by your shop." Despite everything, Katherine felt a small flush of pride. "That is kind of you to say." He shifted his weight, seeming uncomfortable. "I wonder if you might have some time to speak with me, Mrs. Zimmerman, about the bakery." She stared at him. "I do not understand. You own it now. What could you possibly need to discuss with me?" "Perhaps we could talk somewhere more private," he suggested, glancing at the dispersing crowd. Several people were watching them with undisguised curiosity. Katherine hesitated. Meeting alone with a strange man would set tongues wagging, but her reputation was already in tatters. What did she have to lose? "There is a small restaurant around the corner. It is respectable enough. That will do fine." They walked in silence to the restaurant, a modest establishment run by a Chinese family. The lunch crowd had not yet arrived, and they found a table in the back corner. Elijah ordered coffee for both of them, and Katherine waited, her hands folded tightly in her lap, for him to explain himself. When the coffee arrived, he wrapped his hands around the cup and studied it for a moment before speaking. "I grew up on a ranch outside of Fort Worth, Texas. My father raised cattle, and I worked alongside him from the time I could sit a horse. Good life, hard work. When I was 21, he died, and my older brother inherited the ranch. There was not room for both of us, so I took my portion of the inheritance and headed west." Katherine sipped her coffee and waited. She did not see what this had to do with her bakery. "I have been working cattle drives, ranch work, whatever I could find for the past 7 years. Saved most of what I earned. I have been looking for the right opportunity to settle down, maybe start my own business. When I heard the bakery was being auctioned, I thought it might be worth investigating." "You want to run a bakery?" Katherine could not keep the skepticism from her voice. This man looked like he had spent his entire life on horseback, not in a kitchen. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "No, madam, I know nothing about baking, but I know something about business, and I know that a good bakery in a growing railroad town is a sound investment." "I see." Katherine set down her cup carefully. "Then you will be looking to hire a baker." "That is what I wanted to discuss with you." He leaned forward slightly. "Mrs. Zimmerman, you built that business alongside your husband. You know every aspect of running it. It seems to me that the best person to continue running the bakery is you." Hope flared in Katherine's chest, painful in its intensity. "You want to hire me?" "Not exactly." He paused, choosing his words carefully. I want to propose a partnership. You would run the bakery, do all the baking and managing of the day-to-day operations. I would handle the financial side, make sure the bills are paid, that sort of thing. We would split the profits equally. Catherine's mind raced. It was more than she had dared hope for, a chance to keep doing the work she loved, to earn a living. But years of living with Thomas had taught her to be wary of offers that seemed too good to be true. "Why would you do this?" she asked bluntly. "You could hire any baker for wages." "Why offer me a partnership?" Elijah met her eyes steadily. "Because you earned it. You built that business with your own 2 hands. Just because your husband made poor financial decisions does not mean you should lose everything. It is not right." "Life is rarely right, Mr. Sutton." "No, it is not. But sometimes we can make it a little more fair." He pulled a folded document from his pocket. "I had a lawyer draw this up this morning before the auction. It is a partnership agreement. You can have your own lawyer look it over if you like. Take whatever time you need to decide." Katherine took the document with shaking hands. She could barely believe this was happening. "I do not have money for a lawyer." "Then I will pay for one. This needs to be done properly, so you know exactly what you are agreeing to." She looked down at the papers, then back at his face. "I do not understand you, Mr. Sutton. Men do not simply give opportunities like this to widows they do not know." "I am not giving you anything," he said quietly. "I am investing in a business that I believe will be profitable. The fact that it also helps someone who deserves help is just good fortune. I need to think about this. Of course." He stood, placing a few coins on the table for the coffee. "The bakery is mine as of today, but I will not do anything with it until we have reached an agreement." "Take your time, Mrs. Zimmerman." He settled his hat back on his head and walked out, leaving Katherine staring at the partnership agreement in her hands. She did not sleep that night. Instead, she pored over every word of the document by candlelight, reading it again and again. It was straightforward, almost shockingly generous. She would have complete control over the bakery's operations. They would split all profits 50-50 after expenses were paid. Either party could dissolve the partnership with 60 days' notice. There were provisions for how disputes would be handled, how decisions would be made, all written in clear language that even she could understand without a lawyer's help. By morning, Katherine had made her decision. She found Elijah at the hotel where he was staying just as he was heading out for breakfast. He looked surprised to see her but invited her to join him. Over eggs and biscuits, she laid the signed agreement on the table between them. "I have a few conditions of my own," she said. "I am listening. I will not accept charity. This partnership only works if we are truly equals. If you ever feel the need to make allowances for me because I am a woman or a widow, I will walk away." Agreed. "I keep the living quarters upstairs. I need a place to live, and it makes sense for me to be close to the work." "That seems reasonable, and we need to be clear that this is a business arrangement, nothing more." She held his gaze firmly. "I will not have people gossiping that I am your mistress or some such nonsense." A flush crept up Elijah's neck. "Mrs. Zimmerman, I assure you I had no such intentions. This is purely a business matter, good as long as we understand each other." She picked up her fork, suddenly ravenous. "When can we start?" A grin spread across his face. "How about today?" They spent the rest of the morning at the bank, making the partnership official and arranging for the property transfer. Mr. Hutchins looked positively sour as he processed the paperwork, but there was nothing he could do about it. By afternoon, Katherine was back in the bakery, Elijah helping her remove the boards from the windows and doors. The interior was exactly as she had left it. The long wooden counter where customers had lined up for fresh bread, the shelves that had displayed pies and cakes and pastries. the two large ovens that had been her pride and joy. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust, but it was all there, all salvageable. "We will need supplies," Katherine said, already mentally cataloging what she would need. "Flour, sugar, butter, eggs, yeast, and firewood for the ovens. Make a list. I will arrange for everything to be delivered." Elijah was examining one of the ovens with interest. "These are fine pieces of equipment. Thomas had them shipped from St. Louis. They cost a fortune, but they bake evenly, which is essential for good bread." She ran her hand over the smooth metal surface. "I have missed this, more than I realized. Then let us get you back to work." The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Supplies arrived, and Katherine threw herself into cleaning and organizing, determined to reopen as quickly as possible. Elijah proved to be a hard worker, scrubbing floors and washing windows without complaint. He had a quiet, steady presence that Katherine found surprisingly comfortable. He did not try to tell her how to do things or question her decisions. He simply helped where he could and stayed out of her way when he could not. By the end of the week, the bakery was ready. Katherine rose before dawn on opening day, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and nerves. She lit the ovens and began mixing dough for bread, her hands moving through the familiar motions with practiced ease. The smell of yeast and flour filled the air, and for the first time since Thomas died, Katherine felt something close to happiness. Elijah arrived just as the first loaves were going into the oven. He had cleaned up, shaved, and wore clothes that were not covered in trail dust. He looked, Katherine thought, quite handsome, though she immediately pushed that observation aside. "How can I help?" he asked. "Can you work a counter? Take money, make change. I reckon I can manage that. Then we are ready." They opened the doors at 7 o'clock, and within minutes customers began to trickle in. Some were curious about the new ownership, others were simply happy to have the bakery open again. Katherine worked steadily, pulling fragrant loaves from the oven, sliding new ones in, answering questions, and accepting compliments on her bread. Elijah handled the money with quiet efficiency, and Katherine noticed that he had a good memory for names and faces, greeting returning customers as if they were old friends. By noon, they had sold out of everything. Katherine stood in the empty shop, flour dusting her apron and hair, and felt a sense of accomplishment that brought tears to her eyes. "You all right?" Elijah asked, concern in his voice. "I am more than all right. I am grateful." She smiled at him, a genuine smile that felt strange after weeks of grief and worry. "Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Sutton. You have given me back my life." He looked uncomfortable with her gratitude. "You did the work. I just put up some money. It was more than that, and you know it." Over the following weeks, they settled into a routine. Katherine rose early to start the baking, and Elijah would arrive to help with the heavier work and manage the counter. They were both surprised by how well they worked together. Katherine appreciated his calm demeanor and his willingness to take direction. Elijah, for his part, seemed fascinated by the alchemy of baking, often watching as she mixed and kneaded and shaped. "How do you know when the dough has been kneaded enough?" he asked one morning, watching her work a large mass of bread dough. "You feel it. The texture changes. It becomes smooth and elastic." She held out the dough. "Here, try it." He hesitated, then washed his hands and came to stand beside her at the work table. Katherine placed his hands on the dough and guided them through the kneading motion. She was suddenly very aware of how close he was standing, the warmth of his body beside hers, the strength in his hands as they pressed into the dough. "Like this?" he asked, and she could hear the concentration in his voice. "Yes, exactly like that." She stepped back quickly, brushing flour from her apron. "Keep going for another few minutes." She busied herself with other tasks, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach. It was just the proximity, she told herself. She had been alone for so long, it was natural to be affected by having someone close. It meant nothing. But as the weeks turned into months, Katherine found herself looking forward to Elijah's arrival each morning. She noticed small things about him. The way he always hung his hat on the same peg, how he liked his coffee black and strong, the rare, warm smile that transformed his usually serious face. He was kind to the customers, patient with children, respectful to everyone regardless of their station. He worked hard without complaint, and he never once suggested that he knew better than she did about running the bakery. Winter came to Deeming, bringing cold winds and occasional snow. The bakery became a warm haven where miners and railroad workers would stop not just for bread, but to escape the chill for a few minutes. Katherine began offering hot coffee and simple breakfast items, and business continued to grow. One evening in December, after they had closed for the day and finished cleaning up, Elijah lingered instead of heading back to his hotel as he usually did. "Something on your mind?" Katherine asked, wiping down the last of the counters. "I have been thinking about getting a place of my own," he said. "The hotel is comfortable enough, but it is expensive, and it is not really home." "That makes sense." Katherine tried to ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach. If he found a place far from the bakery, would he still come in every day? "Have you found anything suitable?" "Actually, I was wondering about the rooms above the bakery." Katherine looked up sharply. "Those are my quarters, I know. But there are 4 rooms up there and you only use 1, maybe 2. I thought perhaps we could work out an arrangement. I would pay rent, of course, and we could section off the space so we each have privacy." "People will talk," Katherine said automatically. "People already talk." "At least this way we would both benefit. You would have rental income and I would save money and be close to the business." He met her eyes. "But if it makes you uncomfortable, I understand. It was just a thought." Katherine considered. He was right that she only used a fraction of the upstairs space. The idea of having another person in the building was oddly appealing. The nights could be lonely, and there had been times when she had heard noises outside and wished for someone nearby. But living in the same building as Elijah, even with separate rooms, felt like crossing a line she was not sure she was ready to cross. "Let me think about it," she said finally. "Of course." That night, Katherine sat in her small sitting room upstairs and tried to examine her feelings honestly. She liked Elijah, more than liked him if she was truthful with herself. Over the past months, he had become not just her business partner but her friend. She looked forward to their conversations, valued his opinion, enjoyed his company. But she was only a year widowed, and despite the fact that her marriage had been loveless, propriety dictated that she observe a proper mourning period. Yet what did she care about propriety? The people of Deeming had been quick enough to abandon her when she lost everything. It was Elijah who had given her a second chance. Why should she deny herself his company because of what others might think? The next morning, she told him yes. They spent a Sunday afternoon dividing the upstairs space. Katherine would keep the 2 rooms at the front of the building, which included her bedroom and sitting room. Elijah would take the 2 rooms at the back, which had been used for storage. There was a shared hallway and a small kitchen area that they would both use, though Katherine did most of her cooking in the bakery kitchen downstairs. Elijah moved in the following week, bringing with him a surprisingly small amount of belongings. A trunk of clothes, a few books, some personal items. Katherine helped him clean and arrange his rooms and found herself curious about the small details of his life. A photograph of a stern-looking couple, his parents, a pocket watch that had belonged to his father, a well-worn Bible. Not much to show for 28 years, he said, looking around the sparsely furnished room. You have what matters, Katherine replied. Everything else is just things. He smiled at her. I suppose that is true. Living in the same building changed their dynamic in subtle ways. They began taking meals together sometimes, especially dinner after the bakery closed. Katherine would cook simple fare, and they would eat at the small table in the shared kitchen, talking about the day's business or the news from town. Elijah proved to be an easy conversationalist, and Katherine found herself sharing stories from her childhood in Missouri, her hopes for the bakery, even her complicated feelings about her marriage to Thomas. Did you love him? Elijah asked one evening. They had finished dinner and were lingering over coffee. Katherine considered the question. No, not the way a wife should love a husband. I cared for him and I was grateful to him for marrying me when my family could offer little in the way of a dowry. But love? No. I do not think either of us was in love. That sounds lonely. It was, but it was also safe. I knew what to expect from Thomas. We were partners of a sort, even if we were not passionate about each other. She studied him over the rim of her cup. Have you ever been in love? He was quiet for a long moment. I thought I was once. There was a girl back in Fort Worth. I was young, just 19. She was the daughter of a neighboring rancher. We talked about getting married, building a life together. Then her father lost his ranch in a bad year, and she married the banker's son instead, someone who could offer her security. I am sorry, he shrugged. It was a long time ago. I think I was more in love with the idea of her than the reality. I have not met anyone since who made me want to settle down. Is that why you bought the bakery? You are finally ready to settle, maybe. Or maybe I just saw an opportunity to do something good and make a profit at the same time. His eyes met hers, and there was something in his gaze that made her breath catch. Or maybe I saw a woman who deserved better than what life had given her, and I wanted to help. Katherine looked away, her heart beating faster. You should not say such things. Why not? It is the truth. Because I am a widow. It has not even been a year since my husband died. People already gossip about our arrangement if they thought there was anything improper between us. Is there? The question was gentle, not accusatory. No, of course not. Then what does it matter what people think? Katherine stood abruptly, gathering the dishes. It matters to me. I have to live in this town. I have already lost everything once. I cannot afford to lose my reputation as well. Elijah stood too, reaching out to touch her arm lightly. I am sorry. I did not mean to upset you. You are right. We need to be mindful of appearances. But that night, lying in her bed, Katherine could not stop thinking about the look in his eyes, the gentle touch of his hand on her arm. She was not naive. She knew what was happening between them, the slow build of feeling that went beyond friendship or business partnership. But she was terrified of it, terrified of opening her heart again only to be hurt, terrified of what she might lose if she allowed herself to care for him. The new year arrived, bringing with it a cold snap that kept most people indoors. Business at the bakery slowed, giving Katherine and Elijah more time together. They played cards in the evening, read books aloud to each other, talked for hours about everything and nothing. Katherine felt herself softening toward him despite her reservations. He was such a good man, so different from Thomas with his secrets and his debts. One snowy afternoon in February, Katherine was upstairs in her room when she heard a commotion from the street below. She went to the window and saw a crowd gathering. In the middle of the street, two men were shouting at each other, both clearly drunk. Before she could process what was happening, one of them drew a gun. Katherine gasped and backed away from the window just as the shot rang out. She heard screaming from the street, more shouting. Her hands were shaking as she rushed downstairs, not sure what she would find. Elijah met her at the bottom of the stairs. "Stay inside," he ordered, his voice firm. "What happened? Is someone hurt?" One of the men shot the other. "The sheriff has already been called. There is nothing we can do." He gently but firmly guided her away from the door. "These things happen in town sometimes. Best to stay out of it." Katherine nodded, her heart still racing. She had seen violence before in Deeming. It was a rough town with rough people, but it never failed to shake her. "Are you all right?" Elijah asked, his hands still on her shoulders. "Yes, just startled." She looked up at him and realized how close they were standing. Close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes, the concern written on his face. "Katherine," he said softly, and it was the first time he had used her given name. "I want to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out before you say anything." She nodded, not trusting her voice. "I know it has not been a year since Thomas died. I know that by the standards of proper society you should still be in mourning. But I cannot keep pretending that I think of you only as a business partner. I care for you. I have cared for you since the day I saw you standing at the back of that auction crowd, trying so hard to be brave. I bought the bakery because it was a good investment, yes, but also because I could not stand to see you lose everything. And every day since, I have watched you work and laugh and build this business back up, and I have fallen in love with you." Katherine's breath caught in her throat. "Elijah, I am not asking you to marry me or even to return my feelings. I just needed you to know the truth. If you want me to leave, to dissolve our partnership, I will do it. But I could not go another day without telling you how I feel." She stared at him, her mind whirling. Part of her wanted to push him away, to protect herself from the possibility of loss and pain. But a larger part, the part that had been lonely for so long, wanted desperately to lean into him, to accept what he was offering. "I do not know what to say," she whispered. "You do not have to say anything right now." He released her shoulders and stepped back, giving her space. "Think about it. Take all the time you need." He started to turn away, but Katherine caught his hand. "Wait." He looked back at her, hope and fear mingling in his expression. "I am afraid," she admitted. "I am afraid of caring for you and losing you. I am afraid of what people will say. I am afraid I do not know how to be loved or how to love someone back." "I am afraid too," he said quietly. "But I think the fear means it matters, that it is real." Katherine took a shaky breath. "Thomas never made me feel the way you do. In 6 years of marriage, he never once made my heart race the way it does when you walk into a room. He never made me laugh the way you do. He never looked at me the way you are looking at me right now. And how am I looking at you? Like I matter. Like I am worth something." "You are worth everything," Elijah said, and there was such conviction in his voice that Katherine felt tears spring to her eyes. "I think I might be falling in love with you too," she confessed. "I have been trying not to. I have been telling myself it is too soon, that I should not feel this way. But I cannot help it." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she did not, he cupped her face gently in his hands. "May I kiss you?" "Yes," Katherine breathed. The kiss was soft and sweet and nothing like the perfunctory kisses she had shared with Thomas. Elijah kissed her like she was precious, like he wanted to memorize every moment. When they finally pulled apart, Katherine was trembling. "Oh," she said inadequately. He smiled, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "Oh, indeed." They stood there in the bakery, wrapped in each other's arms while the chaos of the shooting continued outside. In that moment, Katherine felt safer and more cared for than she ever had in her entire life. Over the following weeks, their relationship deepened. They were careful to be discreet in public, but in private, they grew closer every day. Elijah continued to sleep in his own rooms, respecting Katherine's desire to do things properly, but they spent their evenings together, talking and laughing and stealing kisses in the kitchen. Katherine found that being with Elijah was effortless in a way that being with Thomas never had been. They talked about everything, from their dreams for the bakery to their hopes for the future. Elijah told her about his childhood in Texas, about learning to ride before he could walk, about the bittersweet day he left his family's ranch. Katherine shared her own memories of growing up in a small town in Missouri, the daughter of a seamstress and a blacksmith who had died when she was young. "My mother pushed me to marry Thomas," she admitted one evening. "She was sick and worried about what would become of me. Thomas was established, reliable. It seemed like a good match." "Do you regret it?" Katherine thought about it. "No, Thomas gave me a home and a trade. Without him, I would never have learned to bake, never have come to Deeming. And if I had not come to Deeming, I would never have met you." "I like that logic," Elijah said with a smile. Spring arrived, bringing warmer weather and a boom in business. The railroad was expanding, and Deeming was growing rapidly. The bakery was so busy that Katherine and Elijah discussed hiring help. They brought on a young woman named Sarah to help with the counter during the busiest hours, giving them both more time to focus on baking and managing the business. One evening in late April, Elijah asked Katherine to take a walk with him after they closed the shop. They strolled down Silver Avenue as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "It has been 6 months since we became partners," Elijah said. "The business is doing better than I ever hoped. We have turned a solid profit every month. You sound surprised." "I am not surprised by your skill as a baker, but I am impressed by how well we work together. I have been in a lot of partnerships over the years, and most of them ended badly. But this feels different, right?" Katherine smiled. "It does feel right." They had reached the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open desert. Elijah stopped walking and turned to face her. "Katherine, I love you. I know I already told you that, but I need you to know that my feelings have only grown stronger. You are the first thing I think about in the morning and the last thing on my mind at night. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You inspire me to be a better man." Katherine's heart was pounding. "I love you too, Elijah. I think I have loved you for a while now. I was just too afraid to admit it." "Are you still afraid?" "A little, but not as much as I was." He took both her hands in his. "I want to marry you, Katherine. I want to be your husband and your partner in every sense of the word. I know it has not been a year since Thomas died, and if you want to wait, I will wait as long as you need. But I needed you to know my intentions." Katherine felt tears streaming down her face, but they were happy tears this time. "Yes. Yes, you will marry me. Or yes, you want me to wait. Yes, I will marry you. I do not care what people think or what is proper. I have spent too much of my life being afraid. I am ready to be happy." Elijah let out a whoop of joy and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around until they were both dizzy and laughing. When he set her down, he kissed her thoroughly, right there on the edge of town where anyone could see. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Deeming. Katherine wore a cream-colored dress that she had made herself, and Elijah wore his best suit. The ceremony was small, attended by a handful of friends and regular customers from the bakery. Some of the more conservative townspeople whispered about the unseemly haste of the marriage, but Katherine found that she did not care. She was too happy to worry about gossip. The first night as husband and wife, Elijah carried Katherine over the threshold into what were now their shared rooms above the bakery. They had combined their quarters, making a proper home out of the space. Katherine had sewn new curtains and made the bedroom as comfortable as she could. Elijah had built additional shelves and furniture, his carpentry skills proving surprisingly good. "I never thought I would be this happy," Katherine said as they lay together that night, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Neither did I," Elijah admitted. "I thought I would spend my life drifting from job to job, never putting down roots. Then I met you. What made you decide to buy the bakery?" "Really?" He was quiet for a moment. "I had ridden into town that morning to sell some horses. I was planning to buy supplies and move on. But I saw you at your husband's funeral, and something about you caught my attention. You looked so alone, but also so strong. Like you were determined not to break even though everything was falling apart around you. I asked around about you, learned about the bakery and the debts. When I heard it was being auctioned, I knew I had to do something." "You saved me," Katherine whispered. "No, you saved yourself. I just gave you the tools to do it." He kissed the top of her head. "You are the strongest person I have ever met, Katherine Sutton." "I like the sound of that name." "So do I." Their marriage was everything Katherine had not known she wanted. Elijah was a considerate husband, attentive and affectionate. He made her laugh every day. They worked side by side in the bakery, and their partnership extended into every aspect of their lives. They made decisions together, shared their hopes and fears, supported each other through challenges, and celebrated successes together. The bakery continued to thrive. By the end of their first year of marriage, they had expanded, knocking through a wall to add more space for additional ovens and a larger storefront. They hired 2 more employees, freeing up more of Katherine's time. She began experimenting with new recipes, and Elijah proved to have a good head for business, negotiating deals with suppliers and finding new customers. One evening in the spring of their second year of marriage, Katherine had exciting news. She waited until they had finished dinner and were sitting together in their small parlor. "I went to see the doctor today," she said, trying to keep the smile off her face. Elijah looked concerned immediately. "Are you unwell?" "No, the opposite actually. I am going to have a baby." For a moment he just stared at her. Then his face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "A baby," he said wonderingly. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" "Happy, Katherine, I am beyond happy. I am overwhelmed. I am terrified. I am more excited than I have ever been in my entire life." He pulled back to look at her. "Are you happy?" "I am. I was not sure how you would feel. We never really discussed children. I want everything with you, a family, a home, a future, all of it." Their son was born in December, a healthy boy with his father's green eyes and his mother's dark hair. They named him Thomas Elijah, honoring both Katherine's late husband, who had first taught her the baking trade, and his father. Little Thomas was a good baby, content and curious, and Elijah proved to be a doting father. Katherine had worried about balancing motherhood with running the bakery. But Elijah and their employees stepped up, giving her time to rest and recover and bond with their baby. When she was ready to return to work, they arranged their schedules so that one of them was always available to care for Thomas. The years passed quickly, filled with the joys and challenges of building a life together. The bakery became a cornerstone of the Deeming community, known throughout the territory for Katherine's excellent bread and pastries. They expanded again, this time adding a small cafe area where customers could sit and enjoy coffee and fresh baked goods. When Thomas was 3, Katherine gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Emma after Elijah's mother. Emma was as spirited and energetic as her brother was calm and thoughtful, and she kept her parents on their toes. Katherine loved watching Elijah with their children, seeing the gentle patience he showed them, the way he made time for them no matter how busy the bakery was. "Do you ever regret it?" Katherine asked one evening. They were sitting on the porch behind the bakery, watching the sun set while the children played in the small yard they had fenced in. "Regret what?" giving up the cowboy life. You could be out on the range somewhere, riding horses and driving cattle. Instead, you are stuck here in a bakery, covered in flour, changing diapers. Elijah laughed. Stuck, Katherine, this is exactly where I want to be. I love this life. I love you. I love our children. I love waking up every morning knowing that I get to spend the day working alongside the woman I love. I would not trade this for anything. Even when Emma spills an entire sack of flour on the floor, or when Thomas decides to help with the baking and makes a complete mess. Even then. He reached over and took her hand. Do you regret it, marrying me instead of taking more time to grieve properly for Thomas? Katherine shook her head firmly. Never. Not for one single moment. You gave me back my life, Elijah. More than that, you taught me what it means to truly live. Before you, I was just going through the motions, surviving. With you, I feel alive. Good. Because I plan to keep you around for a very long time. As their children grew, Katherine and Elijah made sure to tell them the story of how they met. How their father had bought the bakery at auction and given their mother a partnership. How they had started as business partners and become friends and then fell in love. The children loved the story, especially the romantic parts. Did you really not love our other papa? Thomas asked one day. He was 7 now, old enough to understand more complex ideas. Katherine chose her words carefully. I cared for him very much. He was a good man who taught me many things, but I did not love him the way I love your father. Sometimes people marry for different reasons. The important thing is that he brought me to Deeming, and that led me to your father, and that gave me you and your sister. So I will always be grateful to him. I wish I could have met him, Thomas said thoughtfully. He would have liked you. You have his way with numbers. He was very good at arithmetic. Elijah never showed any jealousy about Thomas Zimmerman. He understood that Katherine's first husband had been part of her journey, and he respected the role Thomas had played in her life. On the anniversary of Thomas Zimmerman's death each year, Katherine would bake his favorite apple pie and share it with the family, telling the children stories about the man whose name their brother carried. When Thomas was 10 and Emma was 7, Katherine gave birth to their third child, another son they named Daniel. By this time, the bakery had become one of the most successful businesses in Deeming. They had 6 employees and a thriving mail-order business, shipping their famous bread and pastries throughout the territory. Elijah had proven himself to be a savvy businessman, investing their profits wisely. They bought additional property in town, including a small ranch just outside Deeming where they could grow some of their own wheat and raise chickens for fresh eggs. It was not the cattle ranch Elijah had grown up on, but he enjoyed having land and livestock again. As the children grew older, they each found their place in the family business. Thomas loved the baking side, showing a natural talent for creating new recipes and perfecting techniques. Emma preferred working with customers, her outgoing personality making her a natural saleswoman. Little Daniel, as he grew, showed an interest in the business side, fascinated by the ledgers and accounts. We are building a legacy, Katherine said one evening. She and Elijah were in their bedroom getting ready for bed. It had been a particularly long day, and she was exhausted but happy. We are building a family, Elijah corrected gently. The bakery is just a business. What matters is the love we have built together. Katherine smiled at him in the mirror as she brushed her hair. After 15 years of marriage, he could still make her heart flutter. You are such a romantic. Only with you. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. Have I told you today that I love you? Only 3 times. You are slipping. Then I love you 4 times now. She turned in his arms and kissed him. I love you too. Thank you for buying my bakery all those years ago. Our bakery, he corrected. It was always ours. The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges but also joy and fulfillment. They watched their children grow into capable, kind adults. Thomas took over most of the baking operations, proving himself to be even more talented than his mother. Emma married a young lawyer and moved to Santa Fe, though she visited often and still helped with the mail-order business. Daniel went east to school to study business and finance, planning to return and help expand the family's enterprises. Through it all, Katherine and Elijah remained partners in every sense of the word. They worked together, raised their family together, grew old together. The bakery that had brought them together continued to thrive, now run primarily by Thomas and his young wife, though Katherine and Elijah still came in most days to help and to enjoy the work they both loved. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Elijah surprised Katherine with a trip. They took the train to San Francisco, something Katherine had always wanted to do. For 2 weeks, they explored the city, ate at fine restaurants, saw the ocean for the first time. It was a second honeymoon, a celebration of the life they had built together. "You remember the day we met?" Katherine asked as they stood on the beach, watching the waves roll in. "At the auction. I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever seen," Elijah said. "Standing there watching your whole life being sold off, and you never once broke down in front of all those people." "I cried later, in my room at the boarding house. I cried all night. But you got up the next morning and kept going. That is what impressed me, not that you did not cry, but that you did not let the tears stop you." Katherine leaned against him, his arm around her shoulders. "I never would have made it without you. You saved me." "We saved each other," Elijah said. "I was drifting before I met you. No real purpose, no place to call home. You gave me all of that." They stood there together as the sun set over the Pacific. Two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and built a beautiful life together. When they returned to Deeming, they found that Thomas and his wife had big news. They were expecting their first child, which would make Katherine and Elijah grandparents. Katherine threw herself into preparing for the baby's arrival, sewing blankets and little clothes, just as excited as she had been for her own children. Their granddaughter was born in the spring. A beautiful baby girl named Katherine rose after both her grandmothers. Holding her for the first time, Katherine felt her heart expand in a way she had not known was possible. "She is perfect," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Elijah stood beside her, his own eyes wet, just like her grandmother. As the years passed and more grandchildren arrived, Katherine and Elijah gradually stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the bakery. They spent their time enjoying their family, traveling occasionally, and simply being together. The love that had started in a moment of unexpected kindness had grown and deepened into something unshakable. On a warm evening in late summer, Katherine and Elijah sat on the porch of their home, which they had built on the small ranch outside of town. Their children and grandchildren had gathered for Sunday dinner, and the yard was full of the sounds of playing children and adult conversation. "Did you ever imagine this?" Katherine asked, gesturing to the happy chaos around them. "When you bought that bakery 29 years ago," Elijah thought about it. "I hoped for something good. I knew you were special from the moment I saw you, but this. A love like ours, a family like this, a life so full and rich. I could not have imagined something this wonderful. It all started because you were kind to a stranger. You did not have to help me. You could have bought the bakery and hired any baker in the territory. But then I would have missed out on the great adventure of my life. Loving you, building a life with you, has been the best decision I ever made." Katherine took his hand, their fingers intertwining as naturally as breathing. I used to think I lost everything when Thomas died and the bank took the bakery. But really, I had to lose everything to find what I was meant to have all along. And what was that? You. This. A love that fills every corner of my life. A partnership built on respect and trust and genuine affection. Children who know what it means to be loved. Grandchildren who will carry our legacy forward. We did all right, did we not? Elijah said with a smile. We did better than all right. We built something beautiful. As the sun set over the New Mexico landscape, painting the desert in shades of gold and purple, Katherine leaned her head on Elijah's shoulder. Around them, their family laughed and talked and lived, the legacy of two people who had taken a chance on each other and created something extraordinary. The bakery still stood on Silver Avenue in Deeming, a testament to hard work and second chances. But the real legacy was not in the building or the business. It was in the love that had started there, the family that had grown from it, the lives that had been changed by one cowboy's decision to help a widow who had lost everything. Katherine closed her eyes, breathing in the warm evening air, feeling Elijah's steady presence beside her. She thought about that girl who had stood at the back of the auction crowd, broken and afraid, and wished she could tell her that everything was going to be all right. More than all right. That the man who was about to buy her bakery would become the love of her life. That losing everything would lead to gaining more than she had ever dreamed possible. What are you thinking about? Elijah asked softly. Everything. Nothing. How grateful I am. She opened her eyes and looked at him, this man who had been her partner, her friend, her love for nearly 3 decades. His hair was silver now, his face more lined, but his eyes were the same green that had caught her attention all those years ago. I love you, Elijah Sutton. And I love you, Katherine Sutton, today, tomorrow, and always. Their granddaughter Katherine Rose ran up to them then, her dark curls bouncing. Grandma, Grandpa, come play with us. Elijah stood, offering his hand to Katherine. She took it, letting him pull her to her feet, and together they joined their family in the yard. The evening stretched out before them, full of laughter and love and the simple joy of being together. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, Katherine and Elijah lay in bed together. They were older now, their bodies not as strong as they once were, but the love between them had only grown stronger with time. You remember our wedding night? Katherine asked. When you said you never thought you would be so happy, I remember. I feel the same way now as I did then, like I am the luckiest woman alive. The feeling is mutual. He pulled her closer, and she settled against him, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Promise me something, Katherine said. Anything. Promise me that no matter what happens, no matter how much time we have left, we will spend every moment being grateful for this. For us. I promise. Though I do not think I could forget to be grateful even if I tried. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Katherine. You always will be. They drifted off to sleep together, two souls who had found each other against all odds and built a love that would last beyond their lifetimes. In the morning, they would wake and begin another day, working together, laughing together, loving each other just as they had done for nearly 30 years. The bakery that had brought them together would continue to serve the people of Deeming for generations to come, run by their son and eventually their grandchildren. But the true legacy was the love story that had started with one man's decision to help a woman in need, to see her not as a charity case but as a worthy partner, to invest not just money but his heart. Katherine had lost everything that terrible week when her husband died and the bank foreclosed. But in losing everything, she had found the one thing that truly mattered. She had found love, real and true and lasting. She had found a partner who saw her value and helped her reclaim her life. She had found a family and a future beyond anything she had dared to dream. And it all started because a cowboy walked into an auction, saw a widow trying to be brave, and decided to do something about it. He bought her shop and gave it back, but more than that, he gave her a second chance at life, at love, at happiness. And she had taken that chance and built something beautiful. As the years continued to roll by, Katherine and Elijah lived out their days surrounded by the love they had created. They celebrated 50 years of marriage, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren. The bakery had become a landmark in Deeming, known throughout New Mexico and beyond. On quiet evenings, they would still sit together and marvel at the journey they had taken. From that auction block where everything seemed lost, to a life overflowing with blessings. They had proven that sometimes losing everything is just making room for something better. That kindness and love can transform lives. That second chances are real and worth taking. Their love story became legendary in Deeming, passed down through generations. The tale of the baker's widow who lost everything, and the cowboy who bought her shop and gave it back, only to discover that in giving, he had received far more than he ever imagined. They had found in each other not just business partners or spouses, but true soulmates, partners in every sense of the word. And when their time on earth was done, and they were laid to rest side by side in the Deeming cemetery, their family knew that the love Katherine and Elijah had shared would live on, in the bakery that still bore their name, in the values they had instilled in their children, in the example they had set of what true partnership and genuine love looked like. The bakery stood on Silver Avenue for over 100 years, a testament to what can be built when two people join their lives together with love, respect, and shared purpose. And though the building eventually gave way to progress, the story remained, told and retold, inspiring others to believe in second chances, in the power of kindness, and in the enduring strength of true love.